2 minutes more. Okay. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So today we are celebrating the auspicious day of Guru Purnima, which we celebrated in a very small way on the actual day, that is Thursday. But since most of our celebrations are held on the Sunday or Saturday following the actual Tithi, we are celebrating it today. Yesterday there was a program in London in St. Mary's Church that was also on Vedanta. So today we decided to celebrate in a small way the celebration which is known as Guru Purnima. So in Indian tradition, if you see, Swami Vivekananda once said long ago, and that is in 1897, when he came back from his tour of the West. Tour in the sense he attended the Parliament of Religions, was immensely successful, and after 4 years of preaching in the West, mostly in America, and also he visited England twice in that period, in 95 once, 96 for a longer period, for a few months. So altogether he spent about 300 days in outside India. So as soon as he landed in India, he made a very important remark. He was comparing Indian civilization to all the other civilizations, the Egyptian, the Assyrian civilization. All of them had their moments of glory, and the Greek civilization. So many civilizations were born, they thrived, they succeeded. Many of them even conquered large parts of uh, territory and colonized many countries. But still, the old traditions of their particular culture, they were somehow lost. They were replaced by either science, the rapid progress that humankind has made in science. Whereas Swami Vivekananda remarked that the Indian culture still survives, and he mentions one particular reason why it survives, and he says, he makes a remark. He says, Manu is one of the founders of our Indian culture. He wrote the law books, though the Vedas are far superior than his Smritis. You know, we always made a distinction between Shruti and Smriti. Shruti means the eternal truths based on spiritual experience, genuine spiritual experience, which for Hindus it is the Vedas. So we believe Vedas are our scriptures. But apart from that, to guide the conduct of human life in society, there were certain books written which are known as Smritis. And Manu was one of the first who codified laws to the society as it was relevant in those days. But then there were other Smritis. Many Yagnavalkya and many other Smritikaras came and wrote other Smritis. In fact, Mahabharata is also considered to be, though it is known as a Itihasa, that is history, a record of what transpired in that particular age. But still, there are many other books which are known as Smritis, which are not part of Shruti, what is known as Shruti, which are the eternal truths, which never change. They have validity, they had validity when they were first discovered, they had validity later, and they have validity even today because now they are not based on worldly truths. They are not secular, they are spiritual truths which are eternal and discovered by rishis who base their revelations on certain extrasensory experiences, and which should obviously tally with the previous experiences. So it has come down in a tradition. So Swami Vivekananda said, these rishis, of course, the rishis also had a lineage. If you see the Rig Veda and all the Vedas, there is that is what commonly people understand by the term Gotra. If you ask them, they say, "This is my Gotra." So we trace our lineage to some rishi of the past, maybe several hundred or thousand years ago. The tradition would have started. Some rishi has revealed some truths were revealed to certain rishis as a superconscious experience, and that he has transmitted to future humanity, which the collection of which is now known as the Vedas. So when Swami Vivekananda just set his foot, set his foot into what is known as Ceylon in those days, what was known as Ceylon, it is known as Sri Lanka, but which was part of India and the Indian subcontinent, he said something remarkable. He said, I visited all the other countries, the European countries, which had the Greek civilization and the Roman civilization as their inspiration. But if when you visit modern day Europe, I mean, at least even 125 years ago, Swamiji says, there's very little left of those civilizations. All the ideas which were held dear in those days or supposed to be very precious, they have been all rejected, and modern science and technology and other social movements have replaced them. Whereas in India, he says, even if Manu comes, maybe 2000, 3000 years after he wrote his Smritis, if he comes, he will find the India is intact and society is more or less run on the same lines which he had, the laws which he had codified, at least personal laws. Maybe state laws will change depending on which government is in place. So there is democracy, there is communism, there are so many different systems, political systems, which have been experimented. But he says for India, it doesn't matter whether the Mughals ruled, whether the British ruled, or even the Hindu rulers. Keep it somewhere else. So Swami Vivekananda believed that if Manu came, he would not be surprised because society more or less has retained its uh, the basic ideas that defined its culture, and that he says, trying to explain why it happens in India, why it happened in India, it's happening still now, is because of the strong Guru Parampara. Because knowledge which is transmitted, especially spiritual knowledge. For secular knowledge, you can get it from books, you can get it from different sources. But spiritual knowledge is a oral transmission from, that is why the Vedas were never written down. Now, of course, we have trivialized the Vedas by putting it in print. That's what Max Muller did for the first time. But till Max Muller's time, when he first tried to publish those Vedas were transmitted in an oral tradition because they considered it to be too sacred to put it in, print. Because the oral tradition, the direct transmission of spiritual knowledge can be from one person to another, and that is known as Guru Parampara. So when you say Guru Parampara, it is a very old tradition, very unique in the Indian subcontinent. India in those days included, as you all know, the whole of, you may say, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and even parts of Afghanistan. So the whole area, which the whole Indian subcontinent believed in this idea of Guru Parampara. And the word Shastra or the Shruti, which is our main scripture, the Vedas, they are the spiritual treasures or the revelations in the minds of the purified minds of the rishis. Swamiji says he wrote a nice booklet on Hinduism and Sri Ramakrishna, trying to show what is Sri Ramakrishna's role in the revival of Hinduism. So he mentions this fact. He says, according to Indian system of thought, there are two types of knowledge. One is Shruti and the other is Smriti. The Shastras, by which is meant only the Vedas, and the Smritis, which even includes Bhagavad Gita and the other texts, they follow the Shrutis. They are not Shrutis themselves. They may be better than the codified laws of Manu because they change. When every incarnation comes, he suitably interprets the same Vedas in different ways. So sometimes it is Bhagavad Gita, otherwise it is Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya comes and explains in another way. Even the great Buddha, who belonged to the Hindu tradition, had his own interpretation of the Vedas, though the Buddhists, later Buddhists, they did not accept the authority of the Vedas. By Vedas, they meant the Karma Kanda. The rituals of the Vedas were rejected, but in essence, they did not reject, because all the ideas of Buddhism you can trace to the Vedic revelations because they're super conscious experiences. So, what Buddha experienced, what these rishis experienced, what the entire Guru Parampara tradition experiences age after age is the same. The experiences may be clothed in a new language, and that is why we have the Gita, we have the other Puranas, and other scriptures which are based on the Vedas, but we give importance to the Vedas alone, which are the Shastras. And the Smritis, as far as they agree with the Shruti, they can be accepted. So even those portions of the Mahabharata which agree with the Vedas were accepted. And they were obviously based on the Shruti only. So everything was based on the Shruti, and that was handed over from tradition from a guru to his disciple, and that is how it was transmitted, and that is why Swamiji says India still survives because of this Guru Parampara. So now, if you see in the Hindu, uh, there are so many gods and goddesses. One of them is Brahma. So according to the tradition, this is according to the Indian tradition, Brahma is the Adi Guru because, and that is why he has four faces. The four faces represent the four Vedas. Though the Vedas were codified into four parts by Veda Vyasa, whose birthday we celebrated on Thursday, which is known as Vyasa Purnima. That was his birthday, and it's also known as Guru Purnima. So, the Adi Guru, according to Indian spiritual tradition, is Brahma. And maybe the word Brahman has come, the ultimate reality has come from that word. Etymologically, we can say that the word Brahma is inspired with Brahman, which is of course which has no gender. It is neuter. It is always in the neuter gender. It's neither male nor female. But anyway, Brahman is the reality which was accepted as the supreme reality in the Vedas, which is formless, which is without qualities, which is the pure consciousness, eternal pure consciousness, vaguely or maybe in a very simple way described as Sat, Chit, and Ananda, pure consciousness, eternal existence, eternal consciousness, and eternal bliss. That is the best definition one can give of Brahman. Brahman cannot be described by words, as Sri Ramakrishna said. All the things that we see in the universe can be defined, can be described in words, but Brahman, what Brahman is, has only to be experienced. So, but still, to give a rough idea, we describe Brahman as Satchidananda. So all the manifestations of Satchidananda which we see in the world, one who have realized these truths in their own lives, they are considered to be either rishis or the prophets or the avatars in the Indian tradition. So Brahma being the first inspirer of Vedas, the eternal truths, and the four faces or the four mouths of Brahma, they say, gave rise to the eternal scriptures, that is the eternal truths of the Vedas. Then we come to but then after all, Brahma is a part of our mythology. So we need a human person who transmits these ideas because we are human. We need some human being to enable us to access these thoughts. So the first human form, according to tradition, again, there may be different traditions, but according to one tradition, it is Veda Vyasa, who is the first, considered to be the first human guru. The first human guru, because he was the one who codified or maybe classified these four Vedas, which were inspired by Brahma, into four distinct Vedas: the Rig Veda, the Yajur Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda, which is the essence of the eternal truths, which are also known as Shastras or also known as the Shrutis. So the Shrutis or the Shastras in the Indian tradition, they are the eternal scriptures, and they were for the first time classified by a human guru who is the Adi Guru. So this Vyas Purnima is also known as Guru Purnima. So he's the Adi Guru. And then they say there is a tradition, according to one tradition, if you see, it was his disciple who was Gaudapada, the disciple of Vyasa, they say. Gaudapada's disciple, they were all sannyasins. Since after that, after Vyasa, uh, no, after Vyasa, we have this his mind-born son. He was not born biologically, he was a mind-born son that is known as Shukadeva. So Shuka also you'll find his name mentioned in the Bhagavata. But in any case, Shuka is the next guru who carried forward the tradition. And then we have the succession of gurus where the next guru, who is the grand guru of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya's guru was Govindapada, and Govindapada's guru was Gaudapada, was the founder of the Advait Vedanta system. But of course, it is all based on the Vedas. So the tradition goes that from Shukadeva, it was his disciple Govindapada who is there in that tradition, unending tradition, which you will find. Of course, there are other traditions, and Gaudapada's disciple was Govindapada, who instructed, who in fact asked Shankaracharya, the young boy Shankaracharya, who at the age of 8 goes to him for sannyasa, and he gets sannyasa at the age of 8. And he has only 16 years to live, actually. But then you will find uh, Shankaracharya is given another fresh lease of life for another 16 years by his guru so that he can write the commentary on the Brahma Sutras, or which are also known as Vedanta Sutras. So that is how we'll find that Shankaracharya is first codified, the Guru Parampara, that's why we say, started, and then he created the four mathas in the four to spread these ideas, Vedanta or the Vedic ideas. Vedanta is the essence of the Vedas, which were first inspired from through the mouth of Brahma, that is what they say. And then the tradition says that passing through these various gurus who tried to interpret those Vedas in their own way, then there were several teachers of Vedanta who are the successive gurus. So from there we have Shankaracharya who decided that this Guru Parampara should not die because he came to revive Hinduism when there was this onslaught of foreign ideas, foreign culture, especially Buddhism was apparently the later Buddhists. They completely wanted to cut off from the Vedic tradition, though they were all born into the Vedic tradition. So Shankaracharya was born to save this Guru Parampara, and that is why Swamiji says if Manu comes back, he will find the same India because that India remained the same, though externally there were many changes, and there will be changes. The Mughals came, they brought Islam, the Christians came, there was Brahmo Samaj and all the reform movements. But in spite of all that, somewhere deep within this oral tradition, the Guru Parampara did not die. And Swamiji believed that Shankaracharya, like all the gurus before him, they came to preserve this tradition of gurus. So Vedanta, this Vedanta, which is the essence or the end of Vedas, it's the essence of Vedas actually, which is the eternal philosophy of India, of Indian culture. So that was somehow preserved through this Guru Parampara. And Swami Vivekananda said, as it's the sooner, I mean, the sooner we involve ourselves in that tradition, which is slowly going away, the better for India, because the day that vanishes, like Greece and like all the other, like the great Zoroastrian civilization, where is it now? It's completely destroyed. That great Ahura Mazda on which the whole Zoroastrian tradition, now the Parsis are handful, just scattered all over the world except the place they were born, that is Persia. They were born, the whole Zoroastrian tradition with their wonderful scripture. Even the Jews are struggling to live in the place of their birth, where Moses gave out these teachings. So it is the Guru Parampara which was somehow miraculously saved Hinduism, saved Vedic religion. It was not known as Hinduism in those days. It was just a Vedic religion, Vedika Dharma, as Swami Vivekananda said. And even Shankaracharya used to often tell that if this Vedika Dharma is destroyed, then India will not survive. Swamiji repeated the same words. He said, for the preservation of the Vedic Dharma, these incarnations come. And when he wrote this book, Hinduism and Sri Krishna, he mentions this. What was the situation when Sri Krishna came? And this Sri Krishna, because he had to follow that Guru tradition, you will find that connection to the same Guru tradition through Totapuri, his Advaitic Guru. So as I said, Shankaracharya, to see that this tradition does not die, but because the population of India was increasing, he established four mathas in the four different corners of India. North Badrikashrama, then south it was Sringeri, then west it was Dwaraka, and in the east it was Puri. So he established these four mathas, and all his disciples he classified into a order known as the Dashanami, 10 names. So 10 orders. So he wanted to make sure to meet the demands of the ever-growing population. We need many more Guru Paramparas in the sense that it should branch out and to preserve its existence, because he knew that Vedic Dharma, if it dies, then the quality that gave Indian spiritual culture uh, that eternal values, eternal values that are part of our culture, which because of which we have survived. Because Swami Vivekananda said it did not really matter externally how many times we were conquered. As long as the spirit was strong, as long as this Guru Parampara did not die, and somehow, because it was a oral tradition, you see, all the Buddhist scholars, so many books were destroyed when Nalanda, the greatest university, they say the fire burned for about 6 months. They wanted to make sure that every text that was published, all the Buddhist, mostly they were Buddhist texts because Buddhism was already very popular in India in those days. And most of the scholars, including the Chinese scholar who saw how difficult it was to even get admission into Nalanda University, the gatekeepers would interview the people, and 90% of the people were asked to go away without even entering the gates of Nalanda. Only the few who managed to convinced the gatekeepers, of course, the gatekeepers were scholars, they somehow managed to go in, and then they became great scholars and took knowledge all over the world, China and all the Far East. Wherever Buddhism went, you will find these universities had played a very big role. But unfortunately, because they rejected the Vedas, that is what Swamiji says in his wonderful talk which he gave, Buddhistic India. But what was the single mistake that Buddhism made, because of which Buddhism was driven out of India, was that they did not stick to this Guru Parampara and the oral tradition. As a result, because of the foreign influence, maybe the Chinese influence, they put everything, the Vedas, sacred Vedas, into, they broke the oral tradition and tried to codify it by writing them down on maybe leaf manuscripts and all those things. So whenever knowledge is transferred from the brain to the print into a print form in the form of books or leaf manuscripts or whatever it is, they are susceptible to damage. So when they burned, all the knowledge was lost. But had they continued the ancient Vedic tradition, then unless they kill all the people, they could not destroy these Vedas. Even if one person survived, he could continue that parampara. So that oral tradition, even today, that is reflected because it is considered to be so sacred that these mantras that are handed over from the guru to the disciple have to be oral. It cannot be written on a piece of paper. Because when it is oral, you have to memorize it. It will remain in your mind. Whatever knowledge you get, the entire Vedic knowledge. In fact, even a simple uh, text like Vyakarana, which is a secular subject. Grammar is a secular subject. It has nothing to do with spirituality. But even grammar was never written down. They had to memorize the Astadhyayi of Panini. The sutras, the young, whoever wanted to study grammar, they were young kids and they would go to the school. They were required to memorize all the 4,000 sutras, Panini's grammar sutras. After memorizing, they were allowed to learn under a teacher. So memory played a very important part in this Guru Parampara because it was oral. They made sure that the knowledge was never lost. If it is in the books, there are chances that it will not be in the mind. Whenever we learn certain new things, and when we take up a pick, which is typical Western or you may say even a Chinese invention, the writing was not that we could not invent writing. But our gurus knew the moment you write down a thing, you think it is safe with you. But after all, it is something material. If it is in the mind, the oral tradition, the mantras that you learn, they are part and parcel of your personality. They are nervously associated with your whole biological system. You cannot forget it because you have memorized it. So there is no way that knowledge can be lost unless you are killed. As long as you live, as long as one person lives, it will be. But suppose, as history shows, the fires burnt everything. Even today, if you see the ruins of Nalanda, you will see hundred thousands of books. So many scholars were there. Not only were they killed, but the books were burnt. They wanted to make sure that this knowledge dies along with these people. So since those who there might have been survivors, but their knowledge was in the books, in those magnificent libraries the ancient university built. And they remained in the libraries, and once the libraries were destroyed, the knowledge was destroyed. So that is why Swami Vivekananda said, India will survive as long as this Guru. He said this before coming to India. I mean, of course, it is in those days it was part of India. He came to Ceylon in Colombo. He gave this talk. He said it is still surviving, and Manu would not be surprised because he would see the same. Of course, in those days there were many more schools. Even today in Kerala, you will find that oral tradition. People laugh at them. They'll say, "How can they earn a living? These people are crazy people, superstitious people." That they still stick to this oral tradition. But they are somehow their orthodoxy has survived. I mean, they have survived the modern the influx. Now, because of the written media, written was much later. Now it is all internet and other things. So we are so dependent on that, and we depend so much. And very soon, I think, when we surrender to the machine, to the artificial intelligence, the spiritual knowledge will be lost. Now, at least it is in book form. Then it will be in the audio visual form through YouTube videos and all those things. But they will perish just as paper perishes. The anything that is written down perishes. Now we understand why they stuck to this oral tradition. People think they are orthodox, they are foolish. Why? Well, it is a crime to tell these young boys who come to memorize these 4,000 sutras. But if they can do it and if they did it for centuries, what is the harm? That way, knowledge is permanently preserved, permanently preserved. And then once they memorize all these things, because that was an essential condition, their concentration, their capacity to understand, grasp things. If you could memorize 4,000 of those sutras without understanding the meaning, obviously you have a high level of concentration. So obviously you will not be an ordinary person. So most of these young people, otherwise, how can you imagine this young guru, young 8-year-old boy going to his guru and who is giving him a task of writing the commentary on the Vedas at the age of 8. And at the age of 16, he begins. Of course, at the age of 8, he is given sannyasa, but his studies are going on. That is because before he decides to leave his home in Kaladi, Shankaracharya was already trained by his father. Because of this oral tradition, he had access to all the wonderful knowledge. And because of his knowledge, Govindapada, his guru, uh, who meets him and then sees the talent in this boy, says, "No, I know you are destined to live only up to the age of 16. But by Vyasa's grace, the same Guru Parampara, Vyasa blessed him. Let's say in Banaras, either it was Veda Vyasa or it was Shiva himself who blessed him with another 16 years so that he can complete his unfinished work. By 16, he already started writing the commentary, and by 32, he had established this Guru Parampara. And one of the gurus, as he said, there are 10 uh, uh, guru, what you call Dashanami. Dashanami means 10 names. So you have Puri, you have the title, they were titled. So anybody who belonged to that tradition. And moreover, after Govindapada, after Shukadeva, you may say, because Shukadeva was not married. So Shukadeva onwards, the whole Vedic knowledge was carried over from one tradition to another by sannyasins. So that is why when they do research into the monastic tradition, you will find it is not Buddhism, but it is much later. Though Buddha introduced the idea of sannyasa, but not as a tradition. It was a way of life for them. They were Shramanas and they were these monks in their tradition. Of course, Buddha's contribution is introducing monasticism in a very big way. Even the kings embraced monastic life. But that was systematized within Hinduism by Shankaracharya. He said, if I don't do this, and if I don't leave this spiritual knowledge in the hands of this Guru Parampara, which, because of the influx of modern knowledge and strange races which were already invading India in those days. So he knew that this knowledge will be lost, just as the Buddhist knowledge, the Buddhist scriptures were destroyed. So we find throughout our history, what has saved us, as Swami Vivekananda rightly mentioned, we still live because of our Guru Parampara. So that is why he said Manu would not be surprised if he came today and saw that at least a little bit of that what he started is still surviving. Whereas all other countries, the Zoroastrians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, and the Greek, Romans, they will find that what their great Aristotle and other people started, of course, it is existing in some other form as philosophy and other things, but it's only an academic circle. It's not part and parcel, whereas part and parcel of the common masses of Europe or America or any other country. But if you see in India, this tradition, even if you go to an illiterate person, he will be singing some Baul song or he'll be singing some Bhakti Sangeet, which of course are based on these Vedas. So Sri Ramakrishna, he came at a particular age and he took the help. That is why when you see the first time he meets his Guru Totapuri, he was not his Guru, but Totapuri was destiny sent him to Dakshineshwar. Totapuri is one of the, as I said, there are 10 sampradayas, Puri, Saraswati, and a different Bharati. There are 10 types of religious monastic orders started by Shankaracharya. Maybe Dwarka was given two or three, Puri was given two or three, then Sringeri, and then uh, Badrikashrama. They were all given different titles, and whoever joined or whoever belonged to that tradition, that's why even today they call them Jagat Guru. Shankaracharyas are known as Jagat Gurus because their duty was to see that this transmission of knowledge goes, I mean, is continuously uh, is carried forward to the successive generation. And they wanted to keep it safe so that it is not diluted by worldly ambition. So they said it's only the sannyasins who have the authority because they have no hopefully they will not have that kind of attitude which people who run after wealth and name and fame, they would obviously dilute that knowledge. So, though the knowledge was a prerogative of all the Hindus, including the kings, because some of these Upanishads were inspired in the minds, they were inspired revelations of kings. They were married people. It's not that they were all sannyasis. Most of the rishis also were married. But somehow Shankaracharya felt that in this present age, especially after Buddha, because Buddha insisted on a monastic tradition. In fact, he himself renounced the world, though he was married and had a child, and he would not admit anybody in his organization, in his Sangha, as he called. He was the first. Credit should be given to Buddha, even much before Shankaracharya. He knew the risk of loving this knowledge. There were exceptions. Krishna was a householder. All the great avatars, Rama was an householder. So there was no such requirement in the Vedic age. Most of the rishis were married. So, but still, afterwards, after this, the Guru Parampara, after Shukadeva, as I said, after Vyasa, his son Shukadeva was obviously, he was not married and he was one of the purest human beings that lived on the earth. So Shuka and his disciples gave rise to this Dashanami Guru Parampara, and from that, one of the sampradayas was the Puri Sampradaya, to which the Guru of Sri Ramakrishna, that is Totapuri, belonged. So Totapuri was sent by the Divine Mother, as it were, to see that the tradition is carried forward. It's not that Sri Ramakrishna needed his, in fact, he learned many things. He was not accepting the Divine Mother. He believed that all these gods and goddesses of Hinduism are superstitions. That is what Advaita tells you to believe. So used to make fun of Sri Ramakrishna that he wastes his time going to the Kali temple. But ultimately, if you see, after doing his duty, that is giving sannyasa to Sri Ramakrishna, many people think that Sri Ramakrishna knew that. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna, when he first saw this 24-year-old boy, Sri Ramakrishna was hardly 24 when Totapuri came to Dakshineshwar. And there's a rule, this Puri order, which belonged to some part of Haryana. They all belong to the Haryana state in North India. So there the tradition was these people would not stay in one place for more than 3 days. They always had to move. So that is how they survived begging and going from place to place. They were so strict that you should not be attached to any particular region. So it is very, very rare that he stayed for more than 3 days. That would be breaking the vows. But somehow, miraculously, he was so attracted by Dakshineshwar and Sri Ramakrishna that he stayed there for several months. That was the first time he broke the rule. The whole rule he broke because of the wonderful capacity he saw in his disciple. So, contrary to the popular belief that the name Ramakrishna was given by Totapuri to, because after sannyasa, normally the name is given. So, when he comes, Sri Ramakrishna asked him, "Oh, you are Totapuri," because he had heard about him, and then he said, of course, he knew. So, he asked him, "Would you teach me Advaita?" And then, in fact, it is the other way around. The Guru asks him that, seeing his wonderful spiritual nature, he says, "Would you like to learn Advait Vedanta?" Sri Ramakrishna had already practiced so many forms of Hindu sadhana that he agrees. But then, when he is asked, he said, "But for that, you have to take sannyasa. Advaita cannot be taught. I cannot teach you Advaita without you embracing sannyasa." So that was the tradition. And that was a tradition started by this Guru Parampara of Shankaracharya. Though it was his Guru Govindapada and then Gaudapada who also insisted, because this path of jnana without renunciation is not possible. Bhakti is possible. So when they gave this particular method of jnana, he said, "You'll have to take sannyasa." Then Sri Ramakrishna hesitates for a moment. He says, "My mother is still alive." And he loved his mother so much that he would not eat. He would go and every day used to go to Nahabat, where Sri Ramakrishna used to see that his mother has eaten, then only he would eat. So that came in the way. He said he knew the moment she hears that Gadadhar or Gadai has taken sannyas, like it happened in the case of Shankaracharya, like it happened in the case of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of them, of course, unwillingly, their mothers had to give permission because they had a great role to play. Similarly, Sri Ramakrishna knew and he didn't want to hurt his mother. But still, he agreed because he knew he had to practice. And Totapuri said, "I'll not give you this knowledge of Advaita because for that you have to take formal sannyasa." So he says, "Okay, then I'll go and ask my mother." But Totapuri thought that he is going to ask his real mother, that is the biological mother, which was Chandramani Devi was living. So he said, "Yes, go and ask." He also knew that perhaps she would not agree, but let him go and ask. So he goes and then comes back and says, "My mother has agreed." So he was surprised. He said, "How did she agree?" I mean, he knew no mother would agree. Most of these people who embrace sannyasa would be doing it without any kind of permission. No mother will willingly. Even Shankaracharya's mother, he had to use some technique to escape. You know that famous crocodile incident. If you know, Shankaracharya was caught by the crocodile when he was hardly less than 8 years old. He was swimming in the famous Purna river, and a crocodile. Then he shouts to his mother. He says, "At least before I die, anyway the crocodile is dragging me." It was literally dragging him. And then he says, "At least now you throw that orange, that ochre cloth which was lying on the." He had kept it. And then he said, "At least you throw that and let me at least take sannyasa before I die. Otherwise, I'll not reach the goal of my life." So that poor mother did not know what to do. She said, "Anyway, he's going to die." So she threw the cloth. And then miraculously, you see the crocodile lets go of its hold. And then Shankara comes back. But now she has already given permission. That is how he tactfully manages to take permission. And then reluctantly she agrees on one condition, that before she dies, he should come to see her and perform the rites of after that, because he was the only son. So he promised, though he knew that sannyasins are not allowed to perform the last rites of their parents. So since there was nobody in the family, but he made provisions for somebody to look after his mother and promised her that before she died, he would come and perform the last rituals. And he also uttered the mantra. In fact, he had a premonition when he was in the Himalayas that his mother is sick. So immediately starts for his home in Kaladi. And after he arrives, only she passes away. And then he arranges for a funeral, because of which he was thrown out by the Orthodox priest. They said, how can you perform this ceremony? So he had to do the Shraddha and do the cremation in his own house, in the compound, which they normally don't do. So anyway, that tradition apart, this Shankaracharya knew, I mean, the tradition of Shankaracharya, Totapuri knew that he had to take sannyasa and his mother. But what he said was that the mother whom he referred to was the Divine Mother. So he goes to the Kali temple and he hears very clearly her voice saying that it is I who brought him here because you have to perform this sadhana. So you go ahead. So he would definitely not bother about taking permission from his own mother. So he takes, but of course, he did not wear the gerua. He used to wear it inside, and on the top of it, he used to wear a white cloth always, so that his old mother would not be, I mean, disturbed by seeing her dear son. And he continued to live in Dakshineshwar, of course, everyone knows. So that is why we see this Guru Parampara, which of which Sri Ramakrishna also is a part. He did not break that tradition. That is why some of the monks who belong to our order, sometimes we use the word, Swami Harshanand used to write, Harshananda Puri, because we believe that we belong to that Puri tradition. Since Sri Ramakrishna's Guru was Totapuri and all the disciples, a tradition that has come down from Sri Ramakrishna is also of this Puri Sampradaya. But that is just some technical details. They are not so important because Sri Ramakrishna was far beyond all the traditions. Though he did not break any tradition. You see, that is one great thing about Sri Ramakrishna. He literally followed the tradition by accepting as his guru somebody who belonged to the Dashanami Sampradaya. Because he didn't come here to reform anything like the Brahmos and other people. He did not believe in reform. He said everybody, every religion, every attempt which has happened in history to realize God, whether it is Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, all are different attempts, and different prophets have shown different ways. So, being within the tradition, whatever tradition your uh, prophet or your religion asks you to follow, you have to stick to that tradition and try to realize the truths that the prophets or the great saints or the founders of these religions have shown to the world, then you reach the same goal. It doesn't really matter whether you follow the Puri Sampradaya or any other Dashanami Sampradaya. Otherwise, why would have Shankaracharya divided this monastics? For convenience, they have different names. For convenience, we also have different ethnicities, different religions, different faiths, different beliefs, different geographical locations. So we have different people to inspire us, different cultures, different dresses, different uh, ways of life. But what the Shrutis say, or what the Upanishads say, the eternal truths of all religion, not just the Vedas, all religion according to this Guru Parampara tradition, that eternal truths, though they have to be covered or protected by certain smritis or certain traditions. Smritis are traditions. They are like constitution or something like India has, after we became politically independent, we have a constitution based on which all our laws are formed. So to regulate social life, we need constitutions. We need smritis. They are known as smritis. So just as Manu wrote a smriti, there are so many smritis came depending on the need of the age. That may change. Science and technology have come, so we can modify or explain spirituality in the language of science, but the core ideas do not change. Because if they change, they are not eternal. What changes is secular knowledge. Secular knowledge is subject to change. That which is a product of that information and the processing of the information through the senses, it will change. It will change because new things have been discovered, new methods of knowledge have been discovered, new sciences have been evolved from the old traditional sciences, new technologies have emerged. So there will be a change in this Prakriti, in this world of Maya, as the Advaitins say. So Guru Parampara has nothing to do with that. So each successive Guru, the idea was while adapting to the changes in a changing world. The world is changing, so the laws also will change. But the eternal ideas, the eternal truths, the eternal properties of the spirit or spiritual knowledge, that will not change. If it changes, then it is not spiritual knowledge. So that is what Sri Ram Krishna came to re-establish. In fact, it's a coincidence that 1836, Lord Macaulay, who proposed an entirely new system of education, which Swami Vivekananda in one place says, what they introduced was not an education system which was already there for centuries and which because of which India still survives, but he introduced an examination system which is continuing to this day. This obsession with examinations, with marks, with grades, it's not a Indian India. I don't think there were ever they had grades, and children were much better than in this examination system. So Swami Vivekananda in those days, when 1836 it was introduced, 63 Swami Vivekananda was born. Sri Ramakrishna was still alive. He was born when Macaulay was trying to uh, permanently destroy, if possible, the traditional Indian system of oral education, the traditional Guru Parampara, which they managed to destroy. The structure they managed to destroy, just as the Islamic invasion, they managed to destroy Nalanda, they destroyed the books. But because some Buddhists or some monks of that tradition still lived who could, from memory, reproduce those great truths, though they lost huge libraries, so many works were burnt. But because that oral tradition in some form survived within, or that Guru Parampara, that monastic Parampara from, that is why Buddha also started this Sangha. He said it is Sangam, first Dharma, Buddham, Sharanam Gacchami comes last. First comes the Sangha, then comes Dharma. So, of course, first comes the Dharma. Dharma means Bauddha Dharma. So, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, then the Sangam comes, and last comes Buddha. So I salute to that Buddha who, being part of that Sangha which has preserved that knowledge for posterity, and I also salute not only that Sangha but also the Dharma, which is the eternal truth behind Buddhism, behind every religion. So people may be inspired by the Bible, may be inspired by the Dhammapada, may be inspired by the Quran, may be inspired, but the essential core of each religion, not that Vedas do not have other lower truths. They are known as lower truths. India never says that this is sacred knowledge or spiritual knowledge and this is secular knowledge. That watertight compartment is not there. In Vedas, they say you travel from lower truth to higher truth. If you say the Kathopanishad also, Nachiketa's father, who believed that by performing a particular yajna and donating cows, he will go to heaven, Nachiketa did not criticize that. When Yama gives him the spiritual knowledge, he says, let the yajna that my father immortalized with whatever little desire he had to go to heaven, though it was a temporary heaven, let that, and that was a boon given by Yama himself. He says, henceforth, the yajna which was responsible for you to leave your parents and come here in search of true knowledge, that will be known as Nachiketa Yajna in your name. So it was not thrown away, though Nachiketa, a young boy Nachiketa, realized that his father was making a mistake by doing a yajna which will enable him to spend a few years of pleasure in heaven, which he himself had taught this young boy that it is temporary, even heavens are temporary. So instead of staying in a big mansion, you live in heaven, an imaginary heaven which you create for yourself in the mind. And even though it may be true at the level of the mind in a subtle way, that heaven being temporary, ultimately you have to be born again to reach the goal of life, which Nachiketa wanted. So Vedas never rejected these ideas of heaven, even the crude superstitions. That is why you'll find, along with the greatest ideas of the Upanishads, we will find people going to temples, offering some oil to Hanumanji so that their problems are solved. Sometimes asking Hanuman to become guardians of their property, which they think Hanuman will do. It is ridiculous, these ideas. But still, Hinduism says, okay, at that level, they are so, money is so dear to them, they are afraid that it will be stolen. So they have a superstitious belief that doing some ritual, doing some going to some astrologer and doing this, that somehow their little problems are solved. And they are happy with that. They don't want any spiritual knowledge apart from that. If they can maintain their status quo, at least as long as they live, in old age, of course, that will also be snatched away, but at least they are happy that as long as we live, our hard earned money, hard earned whatever we have gathered, that should not be taken away from us. So they use all their guile, all their effort. At least the atheists are better. They use their own strength to guard their hard earned wealth. Whereas the superstitious people, Swamiji used to say that superstitious people who use religion for their worldly purposes, they are less honest. At least the atheists are honest. They'll put good locks and see, but others, they are so gullible, they'll say, I will pray to this God and nothing, no harm will befall me. So he used to make fun of these superstitions, asking all the great deities whom Hinduism has worshipped, Vedic religion has worshipped, to do silly things for solving some silly problems, which we could do through our own effort. So he says, in fact, I support the atheist who says, I don't believe in God. I don't want God to solve my problems. I'm capable enough to solve them myself. So Swamiji's idea was that to use spirituality for our secular things is not only superstition. It may work sometime or it may not work. But the idea is it's not the purpose. So this ideas transmission, that is why was left in the hands of a tradition which where the master would teach the disciple in a direct way by sharing his experience, not through worldly techniques. Because for a secular teacher, you can use books, you can use academic institutions, you can improve your skill. The more institutions, the more degrees you have, the more skill you will have. That is true for secular knowledge, because there it is the processing of information that makes you a, a good student or a good professional. All the skill sets that you develop in the world, in this changing world, don't require a person, don't require this spiritual tradition. Whereas when it comes to spiritual traditions, this Guru Parampara alone can save it. That is the Swami Vivekananda's conclusion. So he says, because we held on to this Guru Parampara, no amount of invasion by foreign hordes, to begin with 700 years of Mohammedan rule, 200 years of British rule, more than 200 years. Though politically India was subjugated, colonized, and rulers changed, every century rulers changed. But the core spiritual values, because they were held together or they were transmitted through a Guru Parampara who were not bothered what happened, uh, who their political masters were, whether one was Swami Vivekananda, for example. Sri Ramakrishna lived under British colonial rule, but it did not affect him at all. His spiritual quest was not disturbed. If you see his whole life, how did the political colonization affect him? Because things of the spirit do not depend on matter. Maybe physically our poverty and other things increased, but spiritually nobody could deprive us because the spiritual tradition was thriving, it was alive. That is why they say this Guru Parampara, according to Swami Vivekananda, has saved India. And Sri Ramakrishna, for those who follow the Ramakrishna tradition, he is the ultimate Guru. Because that's why we say Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji ki Jai. He is the Guru Maharaj because he taught us a way how, in spite of the changing society around us, suiting to the needs of present day demands of that science and technology and the professional life that we are all immersed in, they have their own demands. They demand their own time. They demand from us all the efforts that we have to put to stay in competition. Just to survive, we have to uh, be part of that competitive world. So, in spite of that, or anticipating that, which had just begun when Sri Ramakrishna came, this age of science and technology was not so well developed. Though he traveled in a train, all these things were there. But over the last 50 years, the change that uh, has taken place was anticipated, if not by Sri Ramakrishna, by Sri Ramakrishna, of course, anticipated that. And his teachings were suited to, uh, it suited the present generation, whom Swami Vivekananda also anticipated. So he said that if India has to survive, this transmission of spiritual knowledge, as long as it is in safe hands, and as long as there is a creative minority of people who hold the flame, uh, who see that the flame is not extinguished, he said nobody can destroy India. She has not been destroyed for centuries in spite of political subjugation. So there's no chance that under the present circumstances, when we are free, when India is free. But he says if spirituality dies, if the ideas of religion die from India, then India itself will vanish in 3 generations. That is what he writes in one of his letters to his Western disciples. He says India will vanish from the face of the earth if it gives up its spirituality. People don't know this, but Sri Ramakrishna or Swami Vivekananda himself once said that it is to revive, to see that the spiritual flame is not extinguished. The Sri Ramakrishna, in the form of the great Guru, came to revive this Guru tradition. That is why he took upon a Guru from the traditional Guru tradition of Shankaracharya, Totapuri. Though he was not bound to that particular tradition, he followed all the different traditions. There are other traditions. Obviously, I'm not saying one of the gurus was Totapuri, but there was a Vaishnava guru, there was Bhairavi Brahmani, the Tantric guru. So he practiced many other spiritual disciplines. There was the Sufi guru, Govind Rai, who taught him the Sufi Islam, how they practice sadhana. So the whole Guru Parampara in different traditions, he lived them. He not only revived them, he himself lived and gave them power. That is one of the main goals of Sri Ramakrishna's life. If you read this, which we will be discussing in the third volume of the Great Master, which is our Sunday class. So we discuss Great Master alternatively with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, his teachings. But the Great Master's third part, the second part is going on, Sri Ramakrishna as a sadhaka. That is very important because after sadhana only he became the Guru. So the Guru Bhav, or the two parts, third and fourth, they deal with the concept of Guru. So if you attend the Sunday class, we will take this discussion forward because Sri Ramakrishna as the Guru, after all his gurus came and handed over their traditions to him into one person. Imagine a Vaishnava guru came, he accepted a Tantric guru who was Bhairavi, who taught both the Vaishnava Shastras and the Tantric Shastras. Then there was Ramayat guru who taught him who was his, uh, he taught him the tradition of worshipping Rama as just like they worship Gopala as the child Krishna. There is a tradition where Ramayat sadhus, they say, they also always worship Rama as a child, not as a grown-up individual or grown-up avatar. They prefer to worship him just as Yashoda worshipped Krishna as a child. And some traditions in India, even today, they prefer to worship him only as a child, as the child Gopala, not as the Kurukshetra Arjuna or Kurukshetra Krishna, who was a guide of Arjuna. So we'll find all these traditions Sri Ramakrishna accepted and revived this Guru Parampara. He could have easily dispensed, he didn't need any Guru. In fact, all the Gurus learned something or the other. Bhairavi Brahmani went away after learning certain things from him. Totapuri accepted the Divine Mother, though he was an Advaitin. because of the experiences he had, because of his contact with Sri Ramakrishna. So also all the other gurus who came, they went away learning many things from him. So that is why we call him, though he initially accepted the Guru Parampara, but he excelled all his gurus. And on this auspicious day, we pray to the great Guru of this age, who is the universal Guru. In our tradition, we always say the other gurus may give the mantra, but the main Guru who is inspiring all of us, that tradition which has come down to us, is Sri Ramakrishna himself. So he is the ultimate Guru, he is the only Guru in our order. We may have human gurus, but it is this ultimate Guru whose inspiration has been filtered, maybe through our human gurus, but it's the ultimate Guru whom we pay our respects. So on this day, it was Swami Vireshwaranandji, who is the 10th president of our order. There was a trend in those days trying to find out somehow the birthday of their own gurus. So somebody approached Maharaj and said, "This is today's day." I said, "Who told you my birthday?" So they wanted to celebrate it. Then he realized this will be a dangerous trend because there will be so many gurus, each one will have a birthday and will be visiting uh, the ashrama. So he says, no, there will be only, you can worship your guru on this day. Everyone can worship his own guru or remember his own guru or pay homage to his own guru on a common day, which is Guru Purnima. So Guru Purnima, which happened on Thursday, it is also known as Vyas Purnima because that is the beauty of Indian tradition. We always trace, the Guru doesn't say, I am the inspirer of the disciple. He says, I can inspire you only because I am part of a great tradition which goes back to Brahma himself. So that's why I tried to trace the tradition. So on this day, of course, the first human form he took was Vyasa. That is why on his birthday, Vyasa Purnima, we call it, we because that is the first time that Vyasa and then his son Shukadeva and then all the subsequent gurus, they derive their inspiration from the Vyasa, who codified or separated this, classified these four Vedas, the eternal scriptures. So we pay homage to him. And in this age, of course, it is Sri Krishna who again, when the Guru tradition was almost about to be lost, because of several cultural invasion from other faiths and then the modern atheism and so many things. There were so many political movements, socio-economic movements, which were threatening the very existence of something which enabled India to survive across centuries. For several centuries, Swami Vivekananda says, it is this Guru Parampara that has saved us. And as long as that is strong and alive, as long as spirituality becomes the, I mean, the Parampara becomes the medium to transmit spirituality to, even if it is a small minority. He said Indian culture, Indian spiritual and cultural heritage will be saved. So we'll conclude. If there are some questions, just see.
Samantha is asking, in what context Maharaj discussed about Panini's Sutra today? Did the
What
Panini
context? No,
Sutra
no, I just
influence
gave,
the
yeah,
Sutra?
yeah. Panini's sutras, they actually, before you learn the Vedas, it is like a preparatory study. There are 6 Vedangas. Vedangas means ancillary subjects which you have to learn before even attempting to study the Vedas. It was not so easy to learn Vedas. They will ask you if you have learned the Vedangas. So you go to other gurus. In that context, I told them about Panini. I mentioned Panini because Panini's grammar is one of the Vedangas. There are 6 Vedangas. One is the Shiksha. Shiksha means the science of pronunciation. So in the oral tradition, it's very important to pronounce every word. And Sanskrit is phonetically one of the best languages because whatever you write, you pronounce. You don't write something and pronounce. In different traditions, you will find there are limitations. You write something and you pronounce it in a different way. Whereas Sanskrit, every alphabet, every vowel, every consonant has a particular uh, sound associated with that. So it is known as shiksha, the science of pronunciation. So one had to be adept in, and then we had to be adept in logic, nyaya. There are so many six sciences, and one of them is Panini's grammar, because without grammar, without studying the sutras, it is difficult. Of course, Vedas have their own grammar. Vedic grammar is slightly different, but of course, he codified all the rules of grammar, and the idea was that without grammar, without knowing how to use a language, especially a rich language like Sanskrit, it needs a sound uh, capacity of sound knowledge of grammar. So I referred to Panini because of that. So the children were made to memorize those 400 words because it's a highly mathematical way of remembering grammar rules. Most of the other grammars, if you see any language, exceptions are more than the rule. So here there is a network of sutras which you have to just memorize, and then when you apply that those grammar rules, they are connected to each other. Unless you memorize it, you can't expect a child to carry a book and when somebody is speaking, refer to your grammar book. So that's why books were not encouraged. You had to memorize it even before you studied grammar. You had to learn the art of pronunciation from a teacher before you studied the Vedas. You can't be expected to learn all the things after joining the course for learning Vedas. I mean, the teacher would expect you to have this prelim and all. That's why I refer to Panini. It has nothing to do with grammar. Is not the essential part, though it is definitely, it prepares you for learning the Vedas. Anything? Yes.
Muslim, I have a question to do with how different paths lead to the same realization.
Hmm.
So with Ramakrishna, he
Not
practiced.
same realization. They reach the goal. See, the thing is, it all depends on the goal you set for yourself. For some religions or some paths, if heaven is the goal, they'll go up to that. So you travel from lower truth to higher truth. So if your goal itself is to get a first class, not complete a PhD, you can't say that he doesn't reach his goal. Your goal itself is to do a master's in a particular subject. You can't say that the goal of completing the master's is the same as the goal of PhD. If you want to do doctorate, you have to spend more time, study more. So these different goals, their different paths, they lead to different goals which their particular sampradaya or particular sect has decided. If somebody says our goal is to go to heaven, I don't care for freedom or nirvana. Buddha says no, heavens are also temporary. So he preferred to even renounce the idea of heaven and go. He wanted total freedom, nirvana. So also Shankaracharya's idea of moksha. So for Vedanta, the goal cannot be anything but total freedom from any kind of bondage. Even heaven is a bondage because it's like enjoying a kingdom for 100 years and somebody enjoys a kingdom for 20 years. You may enjoy for 100 years, but after 100 years, it's going to end. That is what the 6-year-old boy, 8-year-old Nachiketa understood. He told his father, you are trying for something which you yourself has taught me. When you taught me all the Shastras, you told me heavens are temporary. And why are you wasting your time trying to go to heaven? And he gets angry. He says, he is very upset with his son because he tried to question him. But he was right because he knew that he should be consistent. You tell that heaven is temporary and yet run after the temporary. So there's no logic. So he wanted to know what happens after death so that if there is something known as immortality, I want to attain it. So that's the idea. Goal is not same. See, Sri Ramakrishna said, Joto mat tato pat means as many paths, as many ideas, as many faiths, so many paths. So paths are different, but that doesn't mean you reach the same goal. The goal of Islam may not be the goal of Christianity, may not be the goal of Hinduism. They have different goals. They have different concepts of reality.
So is there an underlying goal that not
Yeah,
everyone should strive for, but like the Advaitic realization is somewhat seems more desirable in a way?
No, that is your opinion, and many Advaitins also will believe that. But if you take Sri Ramakrishna, he reconciled this idea. He says, if you think formless God is what you like, you don't want to worship a God either in form or in any form of either as a Hindu, Christian, or any Semitic religion. You might believe in formless, you might believe in God with qualities, God without qualities. So he says all are true. The wonderful example he gave, I mentioned it yesterday. You came for that St. Mary's program, isn't it? So I am told you why, in spite of diversity, we have a unity. Sri Ramakrishna said, as a ocean, as a big ocean, he gave this example. It is just some kind of example that he gave that there is a big ocean where water is formless. Water takes the form of the vessel. Suppose you take it in a pot, it will have that shape. Or if the water freezes, you will have icebergs of a particular shape. But they are still water, isn't it? When it melts, it becomes formless. But at the same time, Sri Ramakrishna also solved the problem of a eternal form, like Krishna or like any other god whom they want to say eternally and live in Vaikuntha. There are some sects who believe that our Krishna is always going to be there in the eternal Krishna. So he said there are certain places in the ocean where the ice never melts. The form always remains the form. But that is also possible. Formless is also possible. And temporary form is also possible. For some religions, for some paths, you start with a form, and when the knowledge comes, the sun of knowledge comes, that ice melts, and then you become one with the formless. So you can't say Advaita is the highest. For yes, for those who want the ocean as water, that is the highest. But if somebody says, I want to always live in the polar region where there is only ice, there is a form, are they wrong? They are also aspiring for the highest, isn't it? So he said it would be wrong to say that Advaita is higher or Dvaita is lower. There are different goals that use, and each goal is valid. Each goal is valid. So you cannot compare. So you got my point.
Yeah.
That's why we have to understand these things cannot be comprehensible unless you read the Gospel and the Great Master, especially Great Master and the teachings as we get it in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Because he was asked all these questions. What we are asking now, they were serious questions asked by the Brahmos because there was a big uh, hodgepodge of different religions. There was Christianity, there was Islam already there in India for 700 years. Different sects of Islam, Shia, Sunni, Vaishnavas quarreling with Shaivites, quarreling with the Shakti Pujaris. They said to call God Kali. Jagdish Chandra Bose, he told Nivedita, this is ridiculous. Don't preach this worship of Kali. She is a terrible goddess. What message you will send to the young children? That was their idea. Scholar like Jagdish Bose. He said, no, we don't support. Brahmo Samaj said Kali Puja should be stopped. It's socially, it will harm. So there such ridiculous ideas were there. It's not that it was only the ignorant people who are fighting against each other. There were serious fights by great scholars, people who would have got Nobel Prize. So that shows how much of ignorance was there. And this Sri Ramakrishna, who never went to school, why would Keshav Sen go and sit at his feet? Because he found here there is true knowledge. They were all fighting over the externals, whereas he went to the heart of the matter. And in a simple rural language, he explained all the great truths. So, to understand the complications, because that's why people, if they are confronted with these contradictions within Hinduism, they lose faith in Hinduism. One of the main reasons is there is no answer. If somebody comes, some person from a simple faith where there is only one ideology, which is obviously very simple to follow, they'll say, you are confused. Can you tell me why this person is worshipping this God? How can there be so many gods? So we don't have answers because we have not understood ourselves. And how can we explain it to young children? That's why I said to understand Vedas, Vedanta, why this diversity is accepted. I mentioned that yesterday. How harmony, vertical harmony, horizontal harmony, it takes place because we we are okay with diversity. In the same family, if five people can love five different types of food, but they can still be part of one family, isn't it? We learn to live with diversity. So, what is the harm in having so many different faiths? But the moment you say, Advaita, I am a Advaitin and I am far superior than all the other people, people who believe in the eternal Krishna, we don't have a right. Sri Ramakrishna said that would be wrong. So, his philosophy, if you want to understand what he really stood for, was not harmony, not that you reach the same goal, but you have different paths according to your faiths, and they will give you the fulfillment according to your path, depending on what goal you have. Okay? Yeah.
So after initiation from Totapuri, did Ramakrishna then believing in non-duality or no
He
form
believed
of
in, I said,
duality?
no, he believed in water, non duality as in water in the ocean. But he also believed in the eternal form. Not only that, he made Tutapuri believe in Mother Kali because of the incident which happened after his realization, and after Totapuri still need not believe. He used to make fun. You are praying to the Divine Mother is just superstition. Okay, you may be a bit childish. So he allowed him to go to the shrine and all. But then he had some experiences and he came running to Sri Ramakrishna saying that now I accept Kali. Then he was very happy that now your knowledge is complete. You accept non-dual reality, but at the same time you accept that God also can manifest whenever uh, needed, depending on the minds of the uh, people who worship. God can change. How can we restrict God that He is always formless, He is always with form, or sometimes He is with form without form? We cannot define God.
Accepting both the philosophies.
Yeah, yeah. Not only accepted, he practiced both. So when he practiced Advaita, he was a Advaitin. When he was practiced Dvaita, he was 100% Dvaitin. When he was practicing Islam, he really became a Sufi according to his guru's instruction. He even refused to go to the temple when he was practicing Sufi Islam from his Sufi guru Govinda Rai. He said no, according to the tenets of that, or there cannot be multiple gods. You cannot worship a idol. He said, okay, I will give up. So because he was keen to see what realization those people have. So he practiced everything as the different sects asked him to practice. And for that he had several gurus. That is why he has the experience of all the gurus put together. That is why when you accept Sri Ramakrishna, you are accepting not only all the gods and goddesses, you are accepting all the faiths, all the different sects within Hinduism, outside of Hinduism, and everything. Because such a all comprehensive. Max Muller writes in his wonderful biography of Sri Ramakrishna, which he wrote. That is the first biography in English published from Oxford. He says, never before in the history of mankind you will find a person who has in turns practiced, not just spoke about. Professors can speak about different religions and academically try to show how they are similar to each other. But he literally, when he practiced Sufi Islam, he literally became a very, very fanatic Sufi who believed in only the reality as described by his Sufi tradition. So when he accepted it, it was 100% acceptance of that guru. So that is why he has the experience, or he has the direct experience of different faiths. So he could, as a result, guide everybody who, no matter to which faith they belong, because he knew the eternal principles behind each religion because he practiced them. That's the idea.
Another question.
Yeah.
Just an extension of the same question. I don't know which question that is.
Okay.
We have many questions.
Okay.
Is there any level of plane further to the goal where reconciliation happens?
Is there again? Repeat. Is there any?
is there any level or lane
Level, okay. Is there any level? Huh?
to the goal
Hmm.
where the reconciliation happening?
No, there is, yes.
And
And
question, if by the same person,
by the same person, okay.
if all the goal
Hmm.
that is God with form and formless dissolve into one common thing, what would it be?
No, we cannot. That is the idea. Uh, the problem with all the people is they are so fascinated by the idea of one or unity that they refuse to accept the fact of diversity. So your question that is there any level where all these ideas merge? No, they will never merge. It is just like there is a goal which is to reach London. You can take any route you like. So how can there be any point till you reach London? Your path is your own, and you will reach London just as your. Maybe somebody will reach early, somebody will reach late. If you take the motorway, maybe you will reach early. So there can be no common. There need not be a common meeting point. There can be, but there is no need that there is a common meeting point where Islam will meet with the Hinduism. They may not meet. They may have their parallel paths, but each one is equally valid. That is the main thing. Okay? Yes. One more last.
Yeah, just I guess extending on the
Yeah.
questions that have been asked. So does that mean both Advaitins and Dvaitins
Hmm?
can achieve moksha? So both following their individual paths, the Dvaitins and Advaitins both can achieve moksha.
Can just repeat?
Can achieve moksha.
Can we achieve moksha?
Yeah, but the different Advaitins and Dvaitins can both.
Yeah, they may have different terms. We do not know whether nirvana is the same as moksha or the nirvikalpa samadhi. See, if you go through a particular path, Vedanta, if you go to Patanjali's yoga, in Hinduism itself, there are six major philosophies, which each one of them has a different path. So yoga, Sankhya, Buddha had a Sankhya guru. So he learned from many people. So we do not know the goal which each one of them reached, each one of these paths takes you to, has nothing to do with the other goals. We don't have to compare because if you follow a particular path, you will reach that goal in a unique way. As long as you stick to your path, that is what Sri Ramakrishna insisted upon. So don't quarrel about the paths. Maybe he'll reach a little late, but somebody he decides to drive to London, he will definitely reach. Maybe he'll reach after 1 hour, he'll take 1 hour more, but he will reach. So there is no such thing as compare. You can't compare the different experiences. You see, these experiences, they begin with some imagination and then you go towards that. Whether it is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, whether it is Father in heaven, as the Christians believe. So each one has his own conception. He doesn't know what is this heaven and what is the meaning of the Father in heaven. Do you know? We don't know. Any Christian who starts on his journey, he prays for the grace of Jesus, the Son, so that he can realize the Father in heaven and he can get some kind of salvation. The idea of salvation that he has depends on the theology that he follows. Within Christianity, also, there's so many ways and different paths. So, also in Islam. So, the way they consider the ultimate goal to be like, that will determine their ultimate realization. So there can be different levels of realization. We don't have to combine. I mean, can't even compare. So if you say to realize the goal of life, that is the highest goal of heaven according to Vaishnavas, is it the same as the highest goal according to the Shaivas? How can you compare? He is happy with his Kailasha, he is maybe the heaven which he has imagined for himself. And Vaikuntha he's happy when he realizes that goal. So how can you compare both these goals? They can be different.
Sorry, this may be a misinterpretation of your analogy, but you use the example of getting to London with different paths, and you can't they may cross the same path, but
They may, yes. Sometimes they may cross.
yeah. So I think this question that we all have is down to the point that we're all reaching London at the end, and that's why I made the mistake of thinking that Advaita realization and Tantric realization may be the same, because you use the example of London to be the end point.
Yes.
Whereas when you're explaining it, it makes it seem as if one person's going to London, one person.
Yeah, but he may be reaching different parts of London. You see, you should not take it literally, because these are analogies. They will always have some kind of analogy, is always an analogy. It's not the real thing. For example, the ice and the icebergs and the polar region. That's the best way Sri Ramakrishna could convince that person. That doesn't mean you should take those things literally. So even in London, as you say, you may reach one corner of London, you may reach North London, somebody may, but it's still London, isn't it? So that way the experience need not be the same. So one who has Nirvikalpa Samadhi or one who has Kaivalya according to Patanjali's yoga, for them that may be the goal. There may be lower goal also. So all people don't have the same, even within the path. They are happy if they reach a particular point in their path. May not be the ultimate. They may not like to reach the ultimate goal. They are satisfied with wherever they reach. Whatever they think is happy, I mean, if they are happy with that goal, then it is fine. So Sri Krishna and Swami Vivekananda explained it by saying it is progressing from lower truth to higher truth. So lower truth, though it is a slightly lower stage in that sense that there are higher possibilities that can be explored, but still they have value. Hinduism does not reject any path. Even if he has a very crude path or very crude way of reaching his own goal, what is wrong with that? The choice is his, isn't it? The aspirant should be given the freedom to follow his own path. That is why we have so many paths in Hinduism. The main idea is freedom in religion was never compromised. So he says if there are 33 million people in those days, maybe there were 33 crores. That is why they say there are 33 crores of gods in Hinduism. They make fun. So he says, what is wrong? Everyone can have his own concept of God. That is the freedom that India gave. You want to become religious, you want to find the goal of your life, you are free to do it and have your own goal and not quarrel. And that's why we lived in harmony in spite of having so many castes, so many religious faiths, religious sects within those faiths. Still, we did not have a problem. Even in the same family, you can have five different people belonging to five different faiths. Because that diversity, if you accept it, is not a problem. But if you want unity and destroy all diversity, which is not possible, you can't do it in this world. As long as nature, the very nature of nature, the nature you see around you is diversity. No two trees, no two fingers are same. The finger marks, no two faces are same. So how can you expect uniformity? That's the idea. Okay, so we'll go. It's time for Aarti. It's already late. Hey, we are late.